and welcome back to the Happy Moms Project. I am so excited that you decided to join me again today, and I am so excited for you guys to hear from my guest, somebody who I trust so much. I've been trusting for years with my own personal development and my own shaping and reshaping of my brain, which helped me prepare so much to be in the best role ever, which is being Jack's mom. So, Ryan, welcome.
Thank you.
I am joined by Ryan, guys. Ryan is amazing. Why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself and your credentials and everything you've helped me do?
So I am a licensed mental health therapist. My background is at the intersection of neuroscience, technology, and all things psychology and personal growth and development related. I've spent many, many years helping people optimize their relationship with themselves so they can optimize and live more fulfilling lives with those that they love.
Yeah.
Through really helping them understand how their brain and body works, how their mind works, helping them taking them through transformative journeys like you've gone through.
Yeah.
So you could better understand why you function and feel and behave and act the way you do.
Yeah.
And then most importantly, in my opinion, is how do we change that?
Yeah.
How do we become someone different? How do we become someone maybe we never seen before?
Yeah.
So that we can be a healthier mother, maybe be a healthier partner, etc.
Yeah. So if you're listening and you've been friends with me on social media for a couple of years, you've probably heard me talk about my brain rewiring. And that is what I have done with Ryan. And it's helped me so much, right, to prepare myself for so many different things. I mean, I think even speaking on stage once, we did some work on that.
Yes,
I spoke in front of 25,000 people one time, and I was quite nervous. And I remember just our therapy and working on the brain and rewiring really helped me just be so confident up there. But it's helped me on way deeper levels than just that. I've become a better person, a wife, a mother,
Yes.
right? And I was sharing with Judy when she was here. He is Judy's husband, by the way. We gotta add that in there. I know you guys love Judy, and we've had her a couple times already. But I've shared with her before that when I started the podcast, I had imposter syndrome because I am a new mom, and I was like, what can I teach?
Yeah.
Moms that have had kids for 10, 15, 20 years. And then Judy reminded me that I've been working with you and with her, and I've rewired my brain, and I've done so much work, especially around what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
And that is working on trauma to become better.
Yes.
But not just become better. Now it's like a whole new purpose to me working on my trauma because it can show up on how I parent, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's not, it cannot, I think the better way to say it is, it will show up.
Yeah.
It's not that if, it's a matter of when.
Yeah.
For most people, if not all people, quite frankly, our lives shape who we are. So it's inevitable that our past experiences and our perception of those experiences is going to show up in the way we act, the way we behave, the way we mother, the way we show up as a wife or a husband.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to show up. So it's through this work that we become more aware of that.
Yeah.
Right? And learn how we can begin leaning in.
Yeah.
And growing and developing ourselves in this new role.
Yeah. And it's little things that I think that until obviously I became a mom, I didn't realize, but you know, my relationship with my dad can impact, you know, maybe I had I don't know, growing up, I saw him lose his temper at a certain point and I thought that was normal. And then I'm like, here I am losing my temper with my kid, right? Not that that's happened, but it could, right?
Yes.
So I think when we talk about this, I don't want to like, I'm scared to sound like too general, but I want people to understand just really how this shows up in everything we do. It's not just like, oh, like mommy, daddy issues. No, this is like the way that someone beeps at you when you're stressed out with work and you yell at them and your kid's in the car. That's the model, the behavior they're going to model, right? Yeah. So it's like, it shows up literally all the time. It's not just the big issues that people think, right?
Right. No, absolutely. And it's one of the examples that I use for people to understand is the shaping of who we are becoming begins in the last trimester when we're inside of mom's belly.
That's powerful.
So if mom is managing stress well, wonderful, right? That's going to lead to, can lead, right? It's going to positively impact the development of the baby.
Yeah.
The opposite of that is also true. If mom is stressed and really, suffering, that's also going to play a role in the development of the baby. And then the first 7 years of life, as most of neuroscience and brain research has really talked about, we're just like sponges and we're absorbing everything. And so the episodes of our life, what we're watching, how we're seeing mom and dad guide us, show up, the relationship that they have, the relationship that we have with them, all of those things are shaping who we are. So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of what, how is it showing up?
Yeah.
Because it's showing up.
Yeah.
It's showing up in ways that oftentimes is very hard for us to see.
Yeah.
And let's be clear, it is going to show up. I know it's showing up in my life. I know it shows up in my wife's life.
Yeah.
So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And that's why it's so important to lean into this type of growth and development
Yeah.
so that we can begin to shape the parent that we want to be,
Yeah.
the wife we want to be, the partner we want to be.
And it's hard to accept, I think, too. I think
100%.
one of the biggest things that I think I've gotten from your, our time together, our therapy together, is that I've become more aware of
Hmm.
who I am, of why certain things were triggers, of why I made the choices I made in my life, right? Um, but a lot of people don't have this awareness. Or if somebody brings it up, it's hard to be like, or it's easy to dismiss it and be like, no, like that's, whatever. It was just a moment of rage, or I was
Yeah.
upset, or I was stressed out. So in your opinion, why do you think it's so difficult for us to realize that our unresolved trauma affects how we parent?
I think we are usually coming from this small sense of self. If you look into deep psychology, things like what Carl Jung talked about in terms of like what this sort of journey of life was like. The journey of life is like at some point you begin to understand that there is a bigger version of us. However, most of us have a difficult time getting out of adolescence, quite frankly.
Okay.
And so when these opportunities show up, what do we tend to do? We tend to feel embarrassed, humiliated, shy away from them, defend our position, which is much of what a teenager would do, right? So we show up that way instead of showing up as an evolving human, as a person that says, well, what is this opportunity? What is this experience here to teach me?
Mm-hmm,
What
hmm.
is my partner? What is she trying to teach me?
Yeah.
Right? What is my child trying to teach me
Yeah.
about myself, about life?
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of training, I guess is another way to answer it. We don't
Yeah.
have any training telling us, hey, like this is this is an opportunity for you to grow into someone much bigger than you could have ever imagined. We The training is typically stay small, defend yourself, protect yourself, keep your ego
Mm-hmm,
nice
hmm.
and safe. And it's and the truth of the matter is that the most painful moments, I talk a lot about pain, and the most painful moments are often the moments that allow us to open up,
To grow the most.
to grow the most,
Yeah.
right? So I think getting back to your question, we are not trained on how to do this thing. We are not trained on how to lean in and actually say, what does this have to teach me?
Yeah.
Right? It's usually the opposite. How
Yeah.
can I defend my position, defend my argument, defend this smaller version of me? Not that we're necessarily explicitly saying that in our minds at that moment. However, the sensation, the subconscious wiring is that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also understanding that like we go so fast, right? Like
Right.
life happens so fast
Correct. Yeah.
nowadays, especially with like emails and social media. And it's like we wake up and the first thing we do is grab the phone and
Yeah.
we're answering a million emails and we see all these messages and we have to get ready and we have to get up. And it's really easy to get like, for example, frustrated by a situation before you even get out of bed, before you
Yes.
even have your morning coffee, right? And
Yes.
then here comes your kid who maybe had a bad night or is teething. And then they do something that they don't know any better. They cannot help themselves. But
Correct.
yet, instead of understanding that, you react, you scream, you take out your anger on them,
Right.
and then you wonder like, why is my kid a bully later?
Right.
Why does my kid have temper tantrums? Why is my kid an anxious child?
Yeah.
And I think it's because we don't realize that it starts with us.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a perfect example how quickly it happens, right? And most of our this growth and development path is a big part of that in what you've learned, right? And what
Yeah.
we've worked together on is
Yeah.
calming the nervous system, right? The calmer you can be, the more present you can be, right? And if the more present you can be, the deeper you can connect to your child in that moment and be attuned to what's going on with them. But to your point, we're so fast paced.
Yeah.
This thing of being calm and present, and it sounds really good on a t-shirt and in an Instagram post. And most people haven't found how to create that time to work on that, which is why
Mhm.
it's such a big part of our process,
Mhm.
right? To calm, to resource, to bring the person into the present. If you can't come into the present moment, you can't see what's going on.
Yeah.
You said a moment ago, how do people become aware, or how do I know I've become aware, and why is it so tough for people to become aware? Because they can't even see what's going on.
Yeah.
If you can't see what's going on, I mean, we don't have anything. The rest of your work will be how to bypass what's actually happening rather than go through the actual experience of what's occurring and leaning into like, what am I really creating here? What am I
Yeah.
really co-creating
Yeah.
in this moment? Why am I why am I so upset? This is a perfectly healthy child
Mhm.
who's going through a very normal, very common stage
Yeah.
of development.
Yeah.
And if I'm not aware of that, then I come from this reactive place. I'm
Yeah.
exhausted. I got to get to work, right? And they're getting in my way.
Yeah.
And there's a huge opportunity missed there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's crazy because, I see it now obviously more than ever. Like life happens and there's times when I'm like, oh, so much is going on and but then I quickly catch myself and I'm like, no, it's not Jack's fault. Like as a matter of fact, that I actually use Jack as a soothing mechanism. I'm like, okay, I'm really stressed out. I need to go hug my kid. Because this is really gonna remind me like what truly matters, right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
again, I like Judy and I were laughing about last time she was on the podcast. Like I've cheated, right? Because I've done so much work with you. But
Yeah.
how about someone who hasn't had the ability to have work with you, like, or with anyone, right? Like how do they recognize triggers? How do they recognize that, hey, maybe like this is an issue, maybe I have a certain trauma that I haven't resolved from my childhood, my last relationship, my divorce, maybe I'm upset at
Yeah.
my ex-husband and I'm taking it out of my child, right? Like how does someone recognize things like that?
Well, I think you hit it. I think when we're becoming reactive, when we're feeling triggered, when we're feeling upset, to really begin to inquire, what's going on? What is this about? And from the standpoint of like, what is this bringing up for me? Why am I reacting? Why am I feeling this way? Not why are they doing what they're doing, which is the temptation, the sort of this adolescent mind, if you will, right? Like, or this undeveloped mind, which is like, why are they doing this to me? Really reverse the inquiry, and the inquiry is, what's coming up for me right now? Why is this happening? Right? What is this being triggered? Why am I being triggered? What am I feeling right now? I don't know that you can get there. Let me be clear. In any kind of real, dare we say, successful way without some guidance.
Yeah.
This is really hard to do. We didn't get this way. I mean, many of us didn't get this way uh, on our own. So
Hmm.
we get there in relationship.
Yeah.
We get there through therapy. We get there in partnership. We get there through seeking spiritual guidance, whatever it is,
Yeah.
but we gotta go in, and we have to have some. We have to entrust someone to show us,
Yeah.
right? So we can get vulnerable with them and say,
Yeah.
"Hey, this is coming up. Can you help me understand a little bit about why this is coming up?"
Yeah.
Because I continue to go read a book,
Yeah.
and that may begin to illuminate some things for you, which is
Yeah.
great, right? Or you can go talk to a friend. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. And if you don't have someone who's been there, done that, taken people through the journeys because they themselves have gone through it, and because they have experience taking people through those journeys of becoming more self-aware, of recognizing what's going on, it's really hard because our mind is automatically designed to protect, to come from this place of survival, which
Yeah.
doesn't always look like survival. It looks like a very legitimate argument.
Yeah.
However, there's stuff coming up there. There is stuff coming up there, and it's all connected. I always say to people when I'm like, and I've done it with you, like when I'll sometimes draw stuff and I'll be like, let's see how this is all connected,
Yeah.
right? And when we draw it out and we connect it, then we start to see, oh wow, that's interesting. How is that's connected to this thing
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
unhealed,
Yeah.
unresolved?
Yeah.
I don't know how we get there on our own. I
Yeah.
really don't. And you could do a lot of meditation. I think there's different. I often talk about different levels of development.
Yeah.
So you're only going to get so far, say for example, as a single person,
Yeah.
because who are you answering to?
Right.
So that's, you can get far. You can start working on your health, your well-being, your nutrition, your sleep,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Optimizing your brain. through things like EMDR,
Mhm.
neurofeedback, things I have experience with, that Judy has experience with as well. And we can get you to new places of functioning for sure. And that skill set is only going to allow you to get so far. Other things are going to show up when you get into partnership.
Right.
Other things are going to show up for you when you get into
Oh,
parenthood,
yes.
right? So I talk
It's
about
like
these,
levels unlocked.
right? Levels unlocked, correct? Beautifully
Yeah.
said. Levels unlocked,
Yeah.
right? New levels of like,
Yeah.
wow, I got a lot more to work on,
Right.
right? Judy and I talk about this often. Like I say to her, you know, when I met you, I was, dare I say, almost a little arrogant about the work that I had done on myself.
Yeah.
And I felt like I had achieved like some really cool place. And then I get
Yeah.
into partnership and I'm failing all over the place.
Yeah.
Real committed partnership with someone I care about, who's
Yeah.
someone who wants to hold me high. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't really know how to do this
Yeah.
in a really healthy way, right?
Yeah.
Work through conflict in really
Right.
constructive ways so that we can, you know, build something with a stronger foundation.
Right.
Parenthood. Oh my God, I don't know how to do this. I thought I did, right? And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's
Yeah.
like, so these different areas are going to really begin to, I would say, welcome it,
Yeah.
embrace it, understand that it's going to happen. If it's happening with any significance, meaning that you're close enough, present enough, you know, you're not checked out working all the time, but you're
Yeah.
present enough, close enough to what's occurring and it's bringing things up for you, that means there's opportunity there for you.
For growth.
And
Yeah.
see that as opportunity as a verse. Maybe that's a way to recognize,
Yeah.
as you were saying
Yeah.
before, rather than look at it as like, oh man, this is something I need to,
Yeah.
as most of us do, go escape from,
Yeah.
turn away from.
Yeah.
This is too heavy.
Yeah. No,
I'm gonna
no,
go.
for
I'm
sure.
gonna go check out. You know, I'm
Yeah.
gonna go call a friend. I'm gonna go work out for 3 hours or
Yeah.
whatever. Really see it as, man, this is a unique opportunity for me to become someone larger, someone healthier, someone with more wisdom, someone more loving.
Yeah. I hear you say that, and the word humility keeps popping up in my head.
Mm,
I say that because um you cannot get to new levels of knowing yourself, and I
mhm,
know this from experience, without being humble.
100%.
And you just said it, right? Like, you
Yeah.
met Judy, you had done all this work. Same thing with me and John, right? Like, I had done, I don't even know how many hours in the chair. And for those listening, the chair is the neural um therapy that
Yes.
Ryan does.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And I had done, I don't even know how many hours, 30 plus hours in the
Yeah.
chair. Um, but then obviously new levels unlocked, right? And for me to like get to that point, I had to have humility to become a better person, for me to be the woman worthy of marrying John.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about this,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then same thing to get to like, being Jack's mom. And one of the first things I did after I got cleared by my doctor, the first thing I did was text my trainer to go work out because I felt like I needed to get my mind right.
Mm-hmm.
But the second thing I did was probably text you and say, like, hey,
Mm. Yeah.
I know I have done all this work. I don't know how the heck I'm going to be doing this moving forward. I'm exhausted. I'm sleep deprived. I'm having drama with work. Like, right? Like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Right. So you tell me if I'm going down the right path. I think someone needs to just have humility to even understand that, like, hey, a change needs to be made, right? You have to confront the hard stuff, even if it means doing things you don't want to do, right? Like, there was a time in my life where I didn't talk to my dad for a couple of years, right? I
Mm.
don't think I would be Jack's mom to the level that I am today, and as present as I am, and as loving as I am, not loving because obviously I would love him, but like, just I wouldn't be to the level of like awareness that I have, that I'm so happy with, being Jack's mom, if I wouldn't have forgiven my dad
Right.
and gotten to the point of like talking to my dad. And that took
Yeah.
years,
Yeah.
that. I think when I met you, I wasn't talking to my dad. So yeah, what do you think about that? Do you think that like humility plays a big role? Do you think it's lack of humility? What do you think it is that stops people from understanding, like, hey, like the
Yeah.
next level is going to be hard, but that's
Yeah.
the only way to get there?
Yeah. No, I love that you're using the word humility. It's like the word humiliation is coming up in podcasts that I'm listening to and audiobooks I'm listening to and things that I'm
Yeah.
reading. Um, and again, I've been lately, what I've been hearing more and more is that they're called necessary humiliations, that we don't actually grow
Yeah.
if we don't actually, so humility, and it's not, I think we have this weird, like sort of, I think humility and humble and those things have like this strange connotation that it's just about being like I don't know,
Submissive.
submissive,
Yeah, yeah.
mediocre, right? Like you don't dress well. I don't know. You don't like nice things. You
Yeah.
don't care about money, and I don't think that's true at all anymore.
Not for me.
Right, right. I just don't think that. Right. I think it's a knowing.
Yeah,
I think it's a
yeah.
knowing. I mean, I think there's definitely some spirituality
Right,
connected to the word humility
right.
and humiliation. Um, I think what was coming up for me right now as you were talking about that is if you think about what happens in partnership and in parenthood, it's like the life we knew as a single person,
Yeah,
right? Just really comes to a screeching halt. It's like it all blows up,
yeah,
right? And the thought that just came to me right now was, i- is that what's supposed to happen in order for us to now become someone different,
yeah,
so that we can become maybe the mother or father that we never had,
yeah,
become the partner, the wife, the husband, right? That we never saw, that we never had in our lives, right?
yeah,
And that this disruption is an invitation, right? This explosion. We don't sleep, we forget to eat. Our self-care goes, away. We don't know what we're doing. We feel lost. We feel confused. There's a Nobody talks about this either. There's a grieving of your previous life
right.
that's
When you become a
unfolding,
parent, yep.
right?
Yeah,
You're not single anymore. You're not just some, single entrepreneur anymore, right? Like you have to now grieve that,
yeah,
right? Because if you're going to surrender
yeah,
and step leaning into this in a real meaningful way,
yeah.
right? And I mean, there are people that I think resist that. We know that
I
exists,
resisted it at
right?
first.
Right. They
Yeah,
resist, right? So you're like, okay, no, I'm not gonna give that up.
yeah,
I'm gonna continue being this. But how do you do both?
yeah,
Right? How are you like a parent of real quality, of real presence, right? And not give up this other life. And so I think the disruption is there and designed to be a part of the path. And the other thought that came to me a moment ago is that I saw this yesterday. Down is up, and we don't see down as up. We see down as something to protect, defend, avoid, prevent from happening. And the truth of the matter is, it's in those moments where we open.
yeah,
So to see down as up is to begin to understand the path of what I believe is real transformative growth and development.
yeah, yeah. Healing is so overwhelming. Accepting all these things is so overwhelming, right? Um, I hear you talk and it like brings up, I mean, it's one of the first things we talked about when I went to see you after having Jack. It's like I love being a mom. I want to be present, but then it's like Liz entrepreneurial, like,
Mhm.
you know, top 10 income earner in the whole world for her company. Like,
Yeah.
it ain't working too well right now,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah.
But again, I feel like I had so much training, right, to recognize these, and I know that not every parent out there has that.
Right.
I remember like being, super not super young. I was 29, walking into Judy's 28, 29, walking into Judy's office, not having done any work and
Mm.
like being just so lost. And I can relate so much to a parent watching this or listening to this that feels like I don't have this training. Like, how do I
Right.
even begin recognizing these? So,
Yeah.
um, what tips do you have for moms when they start recognizing these or how to recognize them, I should say? Wait, let me do that again. So what tips do you have for moms for them to when they realize like, hey, something is off because maybe I am losing my cool. Maybe I am, getting frustrated by things. Maybe I do have a relationship that I need to fix with a parent, with a sibling, with a friend, whatever. That now after hearing this, I can kind of recognize that that's interfering with how I react to certain things my child does or how I communicate certain things to my child, right?
Right.
Um, whether it's like, hey, you're fighting with your best friend, or you feel like your best friend, of many years is no longer your best friend,
Yeah.
are you gonna go tell your child that friendship doesn't exist? The friendship isn't real.
Right.
Like those are real life scenarios that keep popping into my head, right? So if someone's listening to this and hasn't had the training for it, how can they start realizing this and what can they do about it?
So I would say you want to think of this place as the sort of training ground, and on any training ground, what do? We get equipped with
Yeah.
as much as we can. Now I know there's economics involved, and not everybody can afford, a an arsenal of or a team, a network of support,
Right.
you know. But to the extent that you can, I would say that it's probably one of the most valuable investments you can make in yourself. So getting involved in personal growth and development, if it means you start off with a book, you
Yeah.
start off with a book, right?
Yeah.
Some of the books that, when it comes to being a parent, that Judy and I'm still working on getting through the Conscious Parent, but there's also Dr. Becky, I forget her name. Dr. Becky is also very good. We can post that up on the podcast notes.
Yeah.
A couple of favorites of mine, of areas where we can start. I mean, the great news is we're in the age, we're actually past the age of information, but we're in an age where there's a plethora of information out there. So
Mhm.
acquiring new information is going to be like the first step, I would think. The second one would be, how do I start working on this with someone else?
Yeah.
Like I said, it's really hard to do this on your own. It
Yeah.
really is. Uh, it takes a village,
Yeah.
and the reason it took a village was because we needed support in so
Yeah.
many different
Yeah.
ways, right? We need to find ways to sleep. I know it's impossible. I'm not going to say it's easy. I'm a parent. I get it. It's been one of the most difficult things. We need to find a, but and we still need to find a way where we can sleep. We need to find a way we can take care of ourselves, our nutrition, our exercise, um, and getting, even if it's just one therapy session in a month is what you can
Yeah.
afford, um, do it. Like
Yeah.
we have to start somewhere and start. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of how much your past is impacting you. So just know, just lean into it. Understand that there's a lot of stuff that you are going to uncover on this path,
Yeah.
and it's just about getting started. Um, Again, I don't know that you can do what we're talking about doing on your own. And maybe to the extent that we just start gathering new information,
Yeah.
start breathing,
Yeah.
right? Start asking ourselves what's coming up for me
Yeah.
here. In the beginning, asking yourself that question might mean nothing.
Yeah.
I want to say that because if you've done no work asking yourself what's coming up for me, all you're going
Yeah.
to say is, well, I'm exhausted,
Yeah.
or my child's stressing me out, or my
Yeah.
partner's stressing me out, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's not what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about the more transformative work, which is being able to ask yourself that question and then being able to come up with an answer
Yeah.
in the way you're acting and behaving, and in practices that you can start implementing, right? So that you can start feeling more emotionally regulated,
Yeah.
right? So your nervous system doesn't operate in this fight, flight, freeze, panic
Yeah.
sort of way. And
Yeah.
then that's spilling over onto our kids.
Right. So for me, like what's coming up right now is like journaling. Right.
Mm,
So like you can't afford, to go to therapy because not
mhm.
everyone can. How can you start? You can start by journaling.
Yeah.
And I love that you said like what's coming up for me. Like, well, I'm exhausted.
Right.
My kid's annoying me. My
Right.
kid's frustrating me. My kid's not sleeping. My kid's not
Yeah.
whatever, right? Take it a step further.
Yeah.
Well, why are you exhausted? And take the kid out of it.
Right.
It's not the kid's fault.
Right.
The kid's just being a kid,
Correct.
right? It's you. You're at the core of this.
Yeah.
And it's such important work because we are responsible for how our kids see the world.
Yeah.
When you said it, it starts in the third trimester,
Yeah.
which is for me, I learned this back in what I think it was 2020, 2021 that I started working with you. It was like, phew, like light bulb went off because it's like, what was my mom's, state when she was in the third trimester? That's beyond my control. There was
Mhm.
nothing I can do,
Right.
right? But I can't control like what comes after, right? How
Yeah.
were my first 7 years? Was my mom anxious? Did I see like what did I see, right? Our kids are picking that up.
Yeah.
And again, it's not the kid's fault.
Correct.
The kid is just gonna go by what you teach it. And
Right.
it's so important because you're responsible for shaping how they see the world, how they
Yeah.
interact with others, what type of relationships are going to have. Are they going to be a good husband, a good wife, a good mom, a good dad?
Yeah.
Are they going to be alcoholics? Are they going to get into drugs? Or you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's obviously there's things we can't control. I
Right.
understand that, but it's like you're responsible for setting the foundation. So if you don't do that work, like I don't want to say you're failing them, but you kind of are.
Oh, 100% you're
Yeah.
failing them.
So it's like, okay, I'm exhausted. Like, take them out of it. Like, why are you exhausted? Because I'm not getting sleep. Well, why aren't you getting sleep? Right. And I think that you correct me if I'm wrong. I think just like even journaling and kind of like going layers and layers and layers deep can help them to start understand like where the problem is,
Yeah.
you know?
For sure.
And go ahead. Sorry.
No, no, no. I think no, you hit it. The only thing that's coming up for me right now is I think few of us, me included, have any real deep understanding, especially at an experiential level, because we're not parents. We
Yeah.
weren't parents. So, if we're a first time parent,
Yeah.
it's really going to come up, right?
Yeah.
Understanding the stages of development
Yeah.
so that we're better, at least from an intelligence standpoint, we're well educated on what each stage of development. And I did this too. I'd have a few things that, a few Instagram handles that I would follow, a few apps that I downloaded to understand what to expect at specific stages of development. I
Mhm.
studied it in psychology and still
Mhm.
you don't remember it and
Yeah.
recall it real time
Yeah.
until you're real time
Going through
parenting.
it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so helping, me educating myself on what to expect was helpful because then it was like, "Oh, this is to be expected. This is a healthy thing."
Yeah.
As opposed to seeing it as some obnoxious behavior that I
Yeah.
have to try to get rid of,
Yeah.
right? Which is never that. It's all,
Yeah.
there's typically it's never that, right?
Yeah.
There may be something going on, but it's typically never that.
Yeah.
So, I think that that's another key point that we can do too, so that we can understand. Oftentimes, when uh, I'm coaching clients, parents of clients that I'm working with, so adolescents and whatnot. I find that there is a misunderstanding or a lack of understanding, a limited understanding on what they're supposed to be doing at the age of 9, 10,
Yeah.
11, 12, 13, 14.
Yeah.
Like we don't understand.
Yeah.
And so if you understand that, and I forget sometimes,
Yeah.
right? And I have two older ones too, my stepkids, right?
Yeah.
So I forget sometimes what we're supposed to be expecting at certain ages of development.
Yeah.
And so what do? We automatically go to, oh, why are they showing up this way?
Yeah.
Why are they not listening to me? Why are
Yeah.
they doing that? And if you go into educating yourself, you understand, oh no, this is a really good thing because this is common
Yeah.
for this phase of development,
Right.
you know? So I think that's another thing that might be an easy way to begin sort of mitigating or begin showing up differently.
Yeah.
Because if we know that that's to be expected, then we're not coming in there like, oh, I gotta figure out how to
Yeah.
fix this behavior
Yeah.
because it's not something like that they're doing wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. For sure. I love that because obviously Jack's only 9 months, almost 10 now. So like there's so much
So
I
much.
yet, so many different seasons and so many different,
Yeah.
developmental stuff that's coming.
Yeah.
I mean, though I'm already seeing his little, what is it? His attitude, and he gets all like
Yeah.
mad. He's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
starting
Yeah.
to slap me, and I'm
Yeah.
like, it's so hard for me to be like no with a straight face because I'm like, this kid's gonna be a fighter. Like he's gonna be, just fine in life,
Right.
and he's already kind of displaying
Yeah.
that. But I'm like, no, no, and then he'll look at me and laugh, and I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, I'm in for
Well,
for a lot.
and in that same example, there's a real perfect. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah,
Someone who has no education on what to expect at
yeah,
9 or 10 months old, could easily fall into some idea that this is like bad, that they're
yeah,
being
like him
oppositionally
slapping me.
defiant.
Yeah,
And the
yeah,
truth is, it's a way of them communicating
yeah,
to you
yeah,
that there's something about something that's going on in their world
yeah, yeah, yeah,
that they're not okay with.
yeah,
And so they're trying to communicate that with you.
yeah,
So you should, a part of us should be like really happy, really
yeah,
grateful
yeah,
that they're doing that so that we now know, wow, this is this beautiful child trying to tell me something
yeah,
about what's going on in their world.
yeah,
The difficult part as a fully grown adult human, right, that doesn't speak maybe baby, right,
right,
is like, what are they trying to tell me,
yeah,
right? And thankfully, we know that it's usually pretty
yeah,
simple things, right? Like just I'm hungry, I'm tired,
yeah,
whatever, I need to be held. And but I think there's that real. I think you brought up a really good, beautiful, funny point,
yeah,
and it's a point that I think is like really good to unpack,
yeah,
right? We would the person that doesn't have the education around this and has a lot of trauma may react very badly or in a very unhealthy way
yeah,
that's gonna really disrupt or interfere with healthy attachment,
yeah,
right? In that moment, because they want to redirect this child's behavior
yeah,
as bad
yeah,
and label it as a bad and then try to redirect it as opposed to like, you know, lovingly guide them. Like,
yeah,
okay, what's going on? As opposed, I'm not saying that we allow them to necessarily hit us
yeah,
and hit us and hit us, but I'm saying as opposed to just saying stop,
yeah,
that's not okay, and extinguishing in it, and then making them, dare we say, maybe at times feeling ashamed that they
yeah,
showed up that way.
yeah,
Um, I think it's a great opportunity to lean in and say, what's actually occurring here,
Yeah.
and is this common for this stage of development?
Yeah, he's got like 5, almost 6 teeth now, and his new thing is that he likes to bite me. He'll bite me on my shoulder. Actually, the other day I was laying with him in his playpen. We have a huge playpen, and he bit my fat toe, and I was like, "What are you doing by my toes?" Like, anyways,
Yeah, yeah,
um, but I can see how like someone can mistake that if they haven't worked on themselves, and
100%.
like all he's trying to do is just show me he has teeth. He has
Yeah,
teeth. He's trying to
yeah,
explore what to do with these little
yeah,
chompers, you know?
yes, yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
it's so crucial because like I it's again, I cannot talk about enough how important it is for us to work on this because like we are responsible for how they see the
100,
world. And I don't think this is something that I realized until obviously I became a mother. And now it's everything.
yeah,
Now it's everything,
yeah.
you know? And I shared this when Judy was here. I had work trauma that popped up when I was like a week postpartum.
Mm,
And now I'm grateful for it because it helped me. I mean, we talked about this too. It helped me create boundaries.
right.
You know, it helped me create boundaries, and I'm grateful for that because I feel like the old me was like showing up, the old hustle, like I got to get this done, and I was like, whoa, 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 wait. There's a time for everything,
Right.
you know. And my time with my child, that version of me doesn't fit here,
Yeah.
right? And I can see, you know, parents that work, and I work from home. Like I'm pretty, you know, blessed in that sense. But parents that get up in the morning, have to drive in traffic, you know, then have to get
Yeah.
home after being in traffic, cook dinner, do this, do homework, do all these things. I can see why they're stressed out, right?
Yeah.
But it's like you need to learn to recognize that your time with the kid has nothing to do with that. You need to separate the two,
Right.
you know? Because I mean, you can see it. Like I feel like there's kids that like get yelled at for, you know, and then they get scared to express themselves. And those are
Yeah.
the kids that then later have, you know, issues
Yeah.
later on in life. So again, I cannot talk about it enough how important like healing the traumas is. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And in that, I also want to say that there's, remember, we, we can be real quick to like shame ourselves. And I don't think that shame is what's going to propel us forward into this work, into this
Mm-hmm.
personal growth and development journey.
Mm-hmm.
So we can be quick to shame ourselves because, man, Liz, you know, like, come on, you have a child now. You've always wanted a child. Like, why are you still working the way you're working? Like,
Mm-hmm.
come on, like, set it up to where like you can spend more time with. And I think we can quickly shame ourselves. And I think what we want to start understanding is there is a bit of a grieving process. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you're going to actually shift into this role, right,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and embrace it and begin to make shifts, there is along the way, like, wow, I have to say goodbye to this part of me that got
Yeah.
me here,
Yeah.
right? In a way, right?
Yeah.
And you know, not entirely, but in a way, I got to make some shifts.
Yeah.
I want to make some shifts. You don't have to make shifts. I want to make some shifts so I can give this human that I brought into this world uh, a more present version of me,
Yeah.
right? And in that process, I just want to say that, like, in that process, because I know you and I have done this work, there is a gentleness, a compassion, a consideration, and an appreciation
Mm-hmm.
for that version of you that propelled you to get here,
Yeah.
that enabled you to get here, that empowered you to get here, which is beautiful.
Little
And
Liz.
right, little Liz, and you don't want to
That's
necessarily
the name Ryan and I call
right,
her.
exactly. And it's not about
Yeah.
shaming her and saying, hey,
Yeah.
like, you know, like, don't you realize you have a kid and a
Yeah.
husband now? I
Yeah.
mean, you know, come on, get on with your life
Yeah.
and leave this old life. I think I think that's easier said than done,
Yeah.
you know, and I want to be mindful that this is not about shaming our way to as a way to propel us into this new role that we want to create.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that's going to help us
Yeah.
shape the person that we want to be in this new role.
Yeah.
So it's more of a slow and steady shift by shift, you know. I've had to make shifts along the way, right? I had to be more restrictive with work boundaries. I had to, you know, there's a juggling. There's a much more. There's a huge attunement to like trying to get things on a calendar and a schedule in a timely fashion so that I
Yeah.
can make time
Yeah.
for the things that matter in my
Yeah.
life. You know,
And it's understanding that your life just looks different now.
it does.
Yeah. I
Correct.
think someone like me who's so type A and structured, like, um, it was hard to just be like, okay, my life looks different. I have to go to the gym at a different time. I have to wake up at a different time. I have to, you know, things need to be scheduled a different way,
Yeah.
right? And understanding that, like, again, it's just things are gonna be different, you know?
Which is
And
really hard
yeah, change is
considering
hard.
you have how many repetitions of showing up
Mm-hmm.
as this person you
Mhm,
describe as
mhm,
like very work
mhm.
oriented, right? Like how many reps, how many years of disciplining yourself,
Yeah,
right? To get to this place in your life
yeah,
where, you've achieved some degree of, real success,
yeah,
right? How hard was it to get there and how hard did you have to work and how many
yeah,
repetitions you went? So if we took those years, added them up,
yeah,
multiplied them, you have years, right? Of moments of you being disciplined and showing up and having a schedule and being,
yeah,
scheduling your Instagram post or whatever
yeah,
it
yeah,
is,
yeah.
right? You have
Yep,
all
yep.
these, and so all of a sudden you wake up and you're a mom
Mhm.
and you have one day of being a
And I
mom,
forget to post on Instagram.
right? And you have one day of being a mom, one day of
Yeah,
being a mom,
yeah.
an hour,
Uh-huh,
right? Of being
uh-huh.
a mom, 24 hours, 3 days of being a mom versus how many years, how many hours, how many
Yeah,
moments of being this other version of you, right? And so just understand that it's a common and expected thing to at least confront, right? We have to at
yeah,
least confront this. Oh, this is heavily like this outweighs this over here, not because I'm a selfish human, necessarily speaking. I mean, there is, places and conversations
right.
where contexts where selfishness might be something that we want to talk about, but it's not this.
Yeah,
I think we're too automatic to say, well, we're just self-absorbed,
yeah.
but really just look at the
The
year.
balance,
Like,
yeah.
Judy reminds me all the time, like, you had how many years of being a single dude,
Yeah,
no kids,
yep, yep,
entrepreneur, like you come in and you have two-step kids, now your own biological child,
yeah,
you have a practice, right? Like things are going to shift. Things
yeah,
have to shift if we're going to be successful, if we're going to live a meaningful life, they have to shift. We want them to shift. And it is about recognizing that when we first get in, there is an imbalance. So
yeah,
our automatic wiring is not one to think of like, oh, wow, like I really want to put this child first.
yeah,
Yeah, your heart may say that, but all of your wiring, all of your repetitions of previous ways of showing up in the world are that of a single human.
yeah. No, and I think actually now that we're talking about this, like I think it actually goes both ways. And what I mean by that is, as someone becomes self-aware and
Hmm.
realizes that they have a trauma, a behavior, something that's how they've just been their entire life.
Right.
And then they want to change, right? I think it's the same thing. You
Yeah.
have all these years, all these hours, all this like repetition of that negative behavior that you want to change.
Correct.
So like don't get frustrated if you do it for a day and you forget to do it the next day.
Correct.
Right? It's like little by
Correct.
little, right?
Correct. Well, and don't in fact, I would say to you right now, if anyone's trying to sell you on that, you can go from like this version of being this hurt person who has suffered a great deal for many, many years, living a certain way that has uh, increased this narrative that you are not worthy, you're not good enough, you don't matter, etc. And that's the way you've lived the majority of your life. We won't even bring in generational trauma and how
Yeah.
much if we're going to add those years to it, but just in your life to go from that to this, if they're trying to sell you that, I would just save your money because the truth of the matter is that there's no way. What I've now come to understand, even in my own personal life, is that this is a lifelong commitment.
Yeah.
If we are going to reshape, truly reshape, I mean, not just if we're going to really, really, really do
Yeah.
something very significant and change, right, and stop generational trauma, really begin to heal, really begin to evolve into someone different so that we can show up for these children, for our spouse, for the people we care for, the people we serve, maybe in our community, in our business.
Mhm.
This is a lifelong commitment.
Yeah.
It's a lifelong commitment,
Yeah.
and so embrace it, enjoy it, know that it's a path that you're on. Know that if you fall off the path, you can always get back on the path. You don't lose it,
Yeah.
But yeah, you cannot expect, do not expect, and I've failed at this several times because I have often been tempted to think that, oh, I've arrived at a new place,
Yeah.
and oh, maybe the work is done now, and yet a new
Mhm.
opportunity,
Mhm.
right, a new moment will show up and I was not expecting it, right? And all of a sudden, I'm like, "Oh, wait,
Yeah.
but there's more."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the death of progress is comfort.
Right,
And I think
correct.
that, and I'm guilty of that too.
Yeah,
I'm like, wait, I've done all these hours in the chair.
correct,
I've become
correct,
this like,
correct.
person. And again,
Yeah,
that's why humility kept coming up for me when we were first talking at the beginning of the episode, because um that's what I had to be,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
Death, the death of progress is comfort. So if you're like stuck in this area where you don't, you know, whatever in life where you don't want to be, you're still comfortable in somehow.
Correct.
It might be like, okay, things are not going the way I want them to, but you're still comfortable because you're
Right.
not doing the work to grow.
Right.
Because the work is uncomfortable.
It is.
The
It
work is
is.
hard.
It is.
It
It is.
requires you to look at yourself, to
It
change
is.
things, to like, it's not easy.
It is. And it's not easy. I like to be clear. It's not easy because the task to change is all that unfathomably impossible.
Yeah.
Okay. The reason it's so hard is because, again, you have so many years of living a certain way, and you have now attached yourself, going back to little Liz, right? Little Liz has attached herself,
Hmm.
and little Liz had to survive a lot.
Yeah.
She had to overcome a lot,
Yeah.
right? So she becomes this really special person,
Yeah.
right? And then you become really attached. And then so in our attachment, and I mean, if you go into, psychology books and you
Yeah.
go into spiritual teachings, like you understand this idea of attachment and how this becomes our identity, and we think of us, and then now to let go of that to become a mother,
Yeah.
and to be, it's a difficult thing, or to even with our pain and suffering, like we become attached to it,
Yeah.
so we want to
Yeah.
let it go.
Yeah.
Because who are we if we can't play the victim tune that we've been playing for so many years? So that requires us to let go of this narrative that had in its own way had its benefits,
Wow. The victim tune. I love that.
right? It has its own benefits,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So what happens when we no longer have that?
Yeah. Who are we?
Who are we? Who are we?
That's the hard questions that need to get answered.
Right. And that's the daunting question. And in that process, I think what's not talked about enough, Judy and I go back and forth on this a lot. There is a reprogramming of that part to become something else. In that reprogramming of that part, there is what I believe feels like a death.
Yeah.
And it's through that death and that dying of that part and the reprogramming of that part that we now get an opportunity to become something else. But we don't like death.
Yeah.
Who likes death?
Yeah. Yeah.
We do
yeah,
everything
for
in our
sure.
power to, we're not
avoid
getting
it. Yep,
to
yep.
avoid it.
Yeah.
Spend thousands and thousands of dollars for
Yeah.
anti-aging, right? Like,
Yeah.
what is the message?
Yeah.
The message is like, that's not okay. When we're talking about it in the context of transformation,
Yeah.
I think we really have to understand that going through that period of darkness, going through that waking up, feeling lost, walking into Judy's office,
Yeah.
feeling lost
Yeah,
at 28,
yeah.
29, that is the opening. That's the opening.
Yeah, that's why people are like, oh, rock bottom. How many success stories do you hear of like I hit rock bottom, and that's when I
Correct.
knew there was no other way to go up but
Correct.
up, right?
Correct. Yeah.
This is what it is. It's like
Correct.
recognizing like, oh shoot, like
Yeah.
I have to make a change.
Yeah.
And taking it back to obviously, how it affects our kids, it affects our kids tremendously. And
Yeah.
they deserve for us to fix these things.
Correct.
They deserve a fighting chance to become
Yes.
the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
And something that, through my work with Judy, with you, like that always comes up, and literally how I treat every person that I come across is they're doing the best they can with the wiring that they have.
Yes.
Right.
That is true.
But that only can go so far,
Correct.
because when you know, you know.
Correct.
When you know, you know. So
Correct.
you listen to this podcast and you're like, wait, I do lose my cool with my kid. Like, I do have unresolved issues with a parent, with a sibling, with a friend, with whatever. Like, oh, but it's okay. Now you know.
Now you know.
Now you know that
Now
you can
you
do
know.
something about it.
Now you know.
Now you know that your kid is influenced by this.
Correct.
Now you know that you're planning to have another child, that whatever you go through in your third trimester starts affecting how your kid sees and feels, about the world. Now you know.
Correct.
So you have a responsibility to now do
do.
better.
You do. You do. I often say it wasn't your fault,
Yeah.
and it is your responsibility.
Yeah.
And once you understand that, what that means in some degree of significant detail, once you understand what that means, to your point, you can't unsee what you've seen now.
Yeah.
So now when that happens, I don't know that you can use, we're doing the best that we can.
Yeah.
Right? You can say I was doing the best
Yeah.
I could yesterday, but now that I
But
know
now I know
something,
better.
but now I know better.
Yeah.
Right? Or I know that I need to know something better, right? That there's opportunities for me to
Yeah.
grow, right?
I was talking to someone recently about something similar to this, and they were like, well, therapy can just be a lot sometimes because it's always like mommy or daddy issues. And I'm like, yeah, because that's where it stems from.
It is.
So like it really
It
is. And
is.
that's how you can see, like, if you've ever gone through any type of therapy, like, what's the first thing they ask? Like, your relationship with your parents.
Yeah.
Who was your caregiver? Who was your
100%.
caretaker? Like, what type of relationship did you have with them? So that's how literally, people that sit in, failing marriages, like addiction, alcoholism, so many things, right?
Yeah.
It goes back to like, how was your relationship with your parent? There was something along the broken road that led you to where you are here. So again, if we know better, why not start doing better?
Right.
Since they're kids.
Yeah.
Maybe your kids aren't even, 3, 4. Maybe they're adolescents. Maybe they're
Yeah.
20 years old. It's never too late to go back and be like, hey, I'm sorry. Like,
Yeah.
let's talk about this, right?
Correct.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm just, this might be why this is showing up. Again, humility.
Right. Right. That requires a degree of understanding that this is going to be an uncomfortable, and it comes up for you and me,
Mm-hmm,
even with all the work we've done,
mm-hmm,
right? Like,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
there's something still that's unnatural, feels unnatural,
Yeah.
to go in there and just say, hey, I think I might have been wrong about something.
Mm-hmm. It takes a lot to do that, period. Period. But imagine doing that to your child,
Right.
you know?
The accountability there, right? We think,
Yeah.
oh, would you even think to repair with a 9 or 10-month old?
Yeah.
You might not even think to repair with a 9 or 10-month old.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Well, their brain, they're not gonna understand, they're not gonna know, right? We always think children, that's one of the thoughts that came up to me when you're talking about, Jack being, showing his personality
Yeah,
more,
biting.
right? Right?
Slapping me.
Right? And showing these parts of him now.
Yeah.
And I think that we're very dismissive because, they're so young.
Yeah.
They don't know any better. And what we now know today because of science is that it's being recorded. And not only is it being recorded, it's being recorded in ways that we can't even really still fully appreciate, in that they're gonna remember.
Yeah.
They're gonna remember this little moment, this
Yeah.
little interaction. So
Core
I think,
memories.
yeah. So accountability and ownership for the way that we're showing up and going in there and repairing, I don't care how young or how old they are, is always gonna be a good thing. It's always gonna be a healthy thing.
Yeah.
Right. Not just for them, but for us
Yeah.
too,
No, for
right?
sure.
Right. It teaches, and it also models for them the the act, the practice of ownership, right? Because then when as they get older, we want them to tell us the truth, or we want
Mm-hmm.
them to own up.
Mm-hmm.
But did we model that?
Mm-hmm.
Did we model that?
And I mean, to be honest, not even just when they're younger. Like, you're never too old to learn accountability.
For sure.
You're never too old to learn how to say sorry.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, someone could be listening to this and they're a grandmother and they're like, wait, I have to go back, or a grandfather and they have to go back and apologize to their adult children who now have children,
100%.
because, like,
100%.
again, what a huge responsibility to
Yeah.
be responsible for the way someone sees the world.
And that could be a transformative. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that could be a transformative moment for them,
Yeah.
for the grandparent.
Yeah.
That could be a real transformative moment. We think that, as we get older and there's, oh, I'm too old to change, or whatever sayings we grew up hearing.
Yeah, we can lead what is an old horse to water, but we can't make it
Right.
drink it.
Right.
Like,
You can't teach an old dog new tricks. All that stuff
Yeah,
is
yeah,
now
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
much, we now know is pretty much a myth.
Yeah.
And there's reasons that maybe some of it's valid, but certainly what we can say for sure is that even then there's a moment, right? There's a moment that could be very transformative for, and very healing
Mm-hmm.
for both parties, the
Yeah.
grandparent, the adult child, right? And we could, and I think some of us, historically would probably think like, well, I don't, we're already too old, right?
Yeah.
Like, why are we gonna do this, right? Like, and still there's great opportunity.
I mean, how many stories do you hear of people that didn't speak to their parent, and on their deathbed, their parent apologized, and it's like, imagine if you would have gotten that sorry before,
Yeah,
not in their deathbed.
yeah,
What could you have done with that relationship?
for sure.
What could you have done with, to just live life
Yeah,
better? Because holding grudges and that doesn't, you don't live a good life when you're doing that.
you would have freed yourself and them.
Yeah.
You would have freed just accountability, ownership, recognition, repair of some sort, right? Understanding that I might have, like, in that, there would have been a moment of healing and transformation
Yeah.
and freedom, potentially to live a very different life. To your point, it's a really good point.
Absolutely. I love having these conversations. I feel like I've never been this raw and open and vulnerable. And, like, I mean, I think I've been posting my life on social media for 7 years now, since I started my business, and that's going to be now in May. So I love having these conversations because I feel like my followers, I shouldn't say followers, my friends on social media, don't hear this side of me and the deep
Mm.
conversations that I have, right?
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, I love this stuff. I love this stuff. And now that I'm a mother, it's even more important to me.
You made me think of something. I think that we as parents, it's tempting to become one thing or the other, and I think that there's a real temptation to try to, or a real, I don't know, societal pressure, whatever you want to call it, a perception that we have to try to always keep it together.
Yeah.
And going back to what we're talking about, right? It's in this coming apart, in this showing your humanity, in this showing your imperfections,
Yeah.
that you actually become more
Yeah.
relatable.
Yeah.
and especially for your children.
Yeah,
I can relate
absolutely.
to you, mom, because you're human. You do have
Absolutely.
bad days. You do
Absolutely.
have emotions.
Absolutely.
You do know how to take accountability and repair because you make mistakes.
Yeah. I mean, how are we going to ask them to take accountability if we never take it with them?
Right.
You know,
Right.
so
Well, and there's a leveling of the playing ground
yeah.
because if we're always this person that puts off the perception or gives off the impression that
Mm-hmm.
we have it all together all the time, then what are we setting them up for?
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you right now that I've worked with a lot of those kids, and many of them feel inadequate to the task. They feel like this perception of or this impression of perfectionism that's being given off by the parent seems almost attainable, and they will resign themselves to sabotaging behaviors,
Yeah.
right? Levels of inadequacy, feeling not good enough,
Yeah.
right? That they don't matter, that they'll never measure up
Yeah.
because they never got to see the other side
Yeah.
of their parent,
Yeah.
the more relatable side, the human side, the
Yeah.
side that does make mistakes and knows how to address those mistakes in healthy ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. Okay. So I realize now I have an issue and now I feel so guilty of how I've been
Mm,
treating my kids.
mm,
How do I navigate through that in a way that's healthy? Because I don't want to beat myself up for it, right?
right.
I want to recognize little Liz, little whatever, whoever you are out there, right?
Yeah.
You served me, but I got to change. So how do I navigate that now?
I mean, I think first course actions, like first things that would be like really instrumental, is how do we get you to like a neutral place?
Okay.
So we get you to a neutral place by doing some relaxation work,
Okay.
right? Eating a little bit better, exercising a little bit better, finding a little support,
Yep.
getting some better sleep, like really basic stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of very sophisticated podcasts out there, right? All this great research, and they all point back
The
to
basics.
basics.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
always is
Take
basics,
care of yourself.
right? So that would be the first course of action because the more regulated your nervous system is, the less exhausted it feels, the more likely you are to show up.
We got to talk a lot about that because
Yeah.
I talk about regulating nervous systems all the time. And I feel like people that are around me that haven't done work are like, what is she talking about?
Right.
Nervous system. Can you explain why it's so important to have?
Well, let's just like try to break it down as simple as it can be,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
even for like a fifth grader to understand. Like your brain and body, right, are sophisticated systems and they run on energy,
Yeah.
right? And so the lower I just say the lower your energy is, the more likely, as your energy goes down, the more likely you are to react in
Yeah.
ways that feel as if there's a tiger coming after you,
Bear. Yeah.
right?
Baby.
Right? Fight, flight, freeze,
Yeah.
panic, right? So we always want to work towards providing ourselves with sustainable levels of energy
Yeah.
because in that sustainability of the energy, we find opportunities to show up calmly,
Yeah.
present, um, soft spoken,
Yeah.
nurturing, nourishing, assertive,
Yeah.
confident, clear, right? Um, and not the opposite of which is exhausted. And many of us are, we plummet past zero into negative, right? And then we show up and we wonder why we show up so aggressively,
Right.
right? Reacting, screaming, yelling, raging, even, right? And I would say that many people, regardless of how much trauma that they have,
Hmm.
are not trying to show up as, just people who want to rage all the time, right? They
Right.
deep down inside, they probably feel badly. Um, and I would say that exhaustion plays a big part in that. And a
Hmm.
lot of the work that we've done
Hmm.
has been to try to help you regulate,
Hmm.
right, your brain and body
Yep.
through calming,
Yep.
balancing, so that you can show up, you can have better sleep,
Yep.
okay? You can show up more presently, more calmly, more focused, right? So if you have all of those resources um, balanced enough or available enough,
Hmm.
then you're going to be operating your nervous system, your brain and body
Hmm.
are going to be operating from this better balanced place.
Yeah.
And it's going to be easier for you to deliver on how you would like to parent
Yeah.
as opposed to how you end up parenting.
Yeah.
Many of us have a vision of how we want to parent,
Yeah.
but it's not how we end up parenting
Yeah.
because of what we're talking about, at least in part based on what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
no, for sure. We don't realize it, right? We don't recognize it.
Yeah.
But actually an example popped in my head like when we're hungry and we're moody, we call it hangry,
Hmm.
right? Like I feel
Of
it's a very
course.
universally
100%.
well-known term,
Yep.
but people don't realize that it's because a basic need was not met, which is you're hungry. So it affected your mood, right?
100%.
Something happens with everything else.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
I mean, obviously controversial, but like you drink alcohol every night, your nervous system's not
Yeah.
going to be regulated the way it needs
Yeah.
to be. You're
100%.
lacking sleep, right?
It's gonna be hard.
I
It's
got a
gonna be
lot
hard.
of unsolicited comments about, mostly came from people who just kind of got a snippet on social instead of listening to the whole episode, but about me hiring a night nurse for,
Mm,
the first couple of weeks. And if they would have listened, they would have noticed because I was exhausted because I had to go back to work a week postpartum and my
right.
nervous system was not regulated and I was all over the place. And that was, the best choice
Yeah.
um, for me. But yeah, I mean, basic needs need to be met. A nervous system needs to be regulated in order for you to function properly.
Correct.
Right. And a lot of people don't realize that sometimes, like, well, the body can't differentiate fears, right? You get
Correct.
scared about something silly, but then you feel like your life is a death. Is that
Correct.
fight or flight?
Right.
That's going to happen to a child too, which is why it's so
Yes.
important to, again, regulate their nervous systems since the early on, or at
Yes.
least help give them a fighting chance to do so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your regulation is going to contribute and help their system regulate.
Yeah.
We call that co-regulation, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm regulated, I can teach them how to regulate their nervous systems
Yeah.
through the way I regulate and direct my nervous system.
Of
So if I
course.
show up calm, there's a very good chance that they will begin to experience and benefit from that calmness and learn
Yeah.
themselves how to train or how to regulate their nervous system and
Yeah.
feel calm, right? And practice feeling calm,
Yeah.
even when they feel anxious or afraid or sad or angry,
Yeah.
right? They'll be able to, because we can also work. I think the basic needs is number one,
Yeah.
right? I mean, so much of what I teach, interesting enough, in one way or another,
Mm-hmm.
leads back to, at least first initially, leads back to our basic needs being met well enough,
Right.
right? The other part of this is, depending on how much unhealed stuff we have, unresolved trauma we have, then the more the basic needs to be tended to for us to get out of survival and into thriving,
Yeah.
right? Because a lot of the way we operate, a lot of the way our nervous system was trained to operate
Yeah.
was very exhausting. It was a very exhausting set of demands that we put on our nervous system, right? So then what happens is we're in this constant state of survival.
Yeah.
So it's really hard for us to just show up in this calm, regulated state, even if our basic needs are met, because psychologically speaking, our mind body connection still needs some significant work in order for us to feel like automatically. And then once you get to a place where you're healed enough, then whether you get your basic needs met or not, you're able to actually regulate.
Yeah.
So that's a nice shift in this.
Actually, I'll speak to that because I think one of the first things that we worked on when I started going to back in 2020, 2021, I think. I don't remember. It was around that time, right? One of the things I wanted to work on the most was, like, again, like working, workaholic, remember? And it was
Yeah.
like we came to the realization that because I come from a third world country,
Mhm.
because I came here when I was 9,
Yeah.
because I was pretty poor growing up,
Right.
because I had to take on so many responsibilities of, like, translating paperwork for my parents, being there when they
Yeah.
bought houses and cars. Like, I took on so much of it at such an early age
Yeah.
that we realized as to why I was such a, like,
Yeah.
I guess I used the word hustler. And I remember an exercise that, like, now when things happen, when things used to happen with my job used to really affect me a lot, right?
Mm.
And I remember an exercise after, like, peeling back the layers, that I think it was either with you or Judy, that I realized is, like, I'm not going to be homeless because I'm having an issue with work. This is normal. It happens. And I remember that now. And, now when I had an issue postpartum, that helped me so much because, yes, I was
Mm.
annoyed. I was angry.
Yeah.
I was frustrated that I
Yeah.
had to handle a work issue so quickly after
Yeah.
Jack. But because I've had that wiring from 4 or 5 years ago, I was able to be like, this is fine. I'm not going
Yeah.
to be homeless, fight or flight.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
world's not going to end over
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
So it's so important
That's so good.
because I mean,
So
so,
good.
I mean, again, like, I don't think I'd be who I am today if it wasn't for all the work that we've done.
Yeah.
To function at the high level that I function at.
Correct.
Because I feel like I don't post a lot of what really I do behind the scenes. People think, oh, she just posts pictures on social media. No, it's so much more than that. So yeah, I mean, and even just to function at a basic level, not even having to function with such high stress
Yeah.
like I do. Like, you still, like, tight schedules, tight things, like, like, whatever, that's my life every day. I have to do this, but even if that's not your life, like, you still have to regulate yourself and
Yeah.
and find a way to be better every
Yeah.
single day,
Yeah.
So
I think what you're doing now actually is in some ways it not it just is
Yeah.
in almost every way the most daring event.
Yeah.
And it is trying to do not trying to do, really leaning in to lead to understand how to lead a more fulfilling life
Yeah.
because I have worked with many successful people, as has Judy, and I have to tell you that it's a very slippery slope
Yeah. Yeah.
because we end up pouring our time, our soul, our energy, our finances, things that are non-renewable,
Mhm.
right,
Mhm.
in some cases, time especially non-renewable, and we we pour it into things that don't truly matter,
Fill the gas tank. Yeah.
right? They
Yeah.
don't truly matter. So I think you being daring enough to even say that you're looking at this
Yeah.
to see where you might be showing up, where where you have to come in and now integrate this part of you, this Liz, this hustler Liz that had to survive so much, that was really, um, parentified
Mhm.
at 9 or 10,
Mhm.
to have to
Mhm.
look through
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
contracts.
Yeah.
That's not what 9
Yeah.
and 10 years old are supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. For you to actually say, "Well, you know what? She has served me so well, and
Yeah.
now I want to figure out,
Yeah.
right, how I can move into this more, I'll just call it more whole state where
Yeah.
you're like more whole. You're not just like hustler Liz or
Yeah.
wife Liz or it's now how do we blend all those roles together so I can now show up more fully so
Mhm.
that Jack as
Mhm.
this really
Mhm. Mhm.
whole mom, right? This
Mhm.
this this healing mom, right? This
Yeah.
this this mom that continues to heal and tries to figure out how to show up for me
Yeah.
differently. Which what a gift, right? To be able to
Yeah.
continue to lean into that,
Yeah.
because I think again, there's always more growth.
Exactly.
There's always more ways to show Jack that you do in fact love him.
Mhm. Mhm.
There's more ways for you to show up and as a partner, right?
Yeah.
There's always more ways for us to show up in ways that we can show and exemplify
Yep.
that there is more, right?
Mhm.
And I think that we feel like we reach certain states and then we go back to it's really tempting, very easy because remember all the wiring's there, accessible to us.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's really tempting and really easy, especially in the beginning, to fall back into old patterns if we're not mindful, if we would have somebody calling us on it,
Yeah.
keeping us
Yeah.
accountable. Um,
But you know, kids do eventually.
yes, they do.
They do because I have friends, acquaintances, people that I know that like have older kids, and they're like, "Hey, mom, get off the phone. Hey,
Yeah,
mom, pay attention to
correct,
me." You know, so
correct.
they will call you
Yes,
out on
they
it.
will call you out
Yeah.
on it,
Yeah.
right? And can you be present enough to pay attention to
To be
what's
like, "Yep, you're
actually
right."
happening in that moment,
Yeah.
right? We're too busy, caught up,
Yeah.
right? I've been there too, right? Like, hey, dad, you're not like, and I'm like, but I just got to send this email, right? And there's this moment, right? This moment that's we're never going to be able to get
Mhm.
back,
Mhm. Mhm.
and this moment to really call us to something better.
Yep.
Could that email have waited?
Absolutely. Who knows what the other person's doing? Probably with their kid and not even gonna not even
Right,
gonna open it.
right.
Ryan, we could probably stay here for days talking.
Yes,
We're
days.
we're gonna have you back
Yes.
because I mean, like, so
We're
many
just
good.
scratching the
I
surface.
know, and
Just
that's the
scratching.
crazy part.
Yeah,
Over
we're just
5 years
scratching.
of me doing this, and I'm still just scratching the
Yeah, which
surface.
which is a great part to be.
Yeah.
It's like a really like, wow. I went to a workshop and I wanna kind of throw this out there. I went to a workshop last year with Judy, and one of the facilitators of the workshop mentioned, actually, she wrote it in a note. We all wrote notes to each other, and she wrote in a note. She goes, um, "What a blessing it is, or how fortunate are we that we still have a mess, that there's still more for us to what would life be like if it wasn't messy, if there
Yeah.
wasn't a mess, if there wasn't more growth? Like how
Yeah.
boring would it
I
be?
know. I know.
How boring would it be?" And I think many of us, because the work can get exhausting, the work can get daunting, we're
Yeah.
trying to juggle so much, we often are tempted to say, "Man, isn't there just like a finish line?"
Mhm.
And she's I've stayed thinking on that one so much. Like, how boring would life
Yeah.
be if there wasn't more work for us to do? If there wasn't more growth to be had?
And how exciting is it that we get to grow for our kids?
Yes.
I'm gonna leave it with this. I was at my best friend's aunt's funeral a couple weeks ago. I got to meet her and spend time with her, Linda, such an amazing human. Um, but her sons spoke,
Mm,
and I was in tears, obviously because I love Linda and she was so amazing, but also because of how her kids spoke. of
Mm,
like, she was there for
mm,
them. She helped them through every stage of life. They grew together. Um, crying even thinking about it. And all I could think about was like, wow, one day I want Jack to talk about me like that.
mm.
So special,
Let's go.
Like how exciting is it that we get to like grow together?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Beautiful
exceptional.
thing.
Yeah. Super exciting.
Super exciting.
I love that. I love
All
that.
right, let me stop
I love
crying.
that.
But
I love that. I
thank you
love that.
so much
Thank you.
for being here. You're for sure
Yeah.
gonna come back,
This was
hopefully.
awesome. Yes, this was awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks for
tell
having
them how
me.
to find you on social.
Yeah, Ryan at ryanlandau.live. Or I think it's no, that's my email. Sorry.
I guess
Ryan,
we need
right,
that too.
ryanlandau.live. So either or. So Ryan
No, your
Landau.
Instagram
Yeah,
handle.
yeah, ryanlandau.live. Yep.
Ryan is getting used to social media.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Right, right,
And I
right.
hope we don't cut that out in editing. I want them
Yeah,
to
no,
have your
please.
email, number
Absolutely.
one.
Absolutely. Have them
But
both.
number two, to like, I want them to follow you because you
Yeah.
have such amazing stuff that you post all the time. So,
Thanks so much.
yeah,
Appreciate you.
of course. Thank you. Thank you for sharing a little bit of your precious time with me today. I know your time is gold, and I'm truly honored that you chose to spend it here. If this episode spoke to you, do not forget to hit subscribe so we can stay connected. And if you know a parent who needs to hear this, please share it with them because none of us are in this alone. I'll be right here next week with more tips, stories, and reminders that you matter. Until then, remember, taking care of yourself isn't just for you, it's for your kids, for your family, and for your sanity. You're doing an amazing job. Take care of yourself and keep making space for your happiness.